Henriques.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of PsyQuest Podcast. I have a fantastic guest for you today. He's a coach, he's a writer, and a writer who wrote an amazing, very large book on powerlifting. He covered everything you will ever need to know about powerlifting. But the one and the only Tim Henriques.
Pretty close, Henriques. There you go. Close enough.
See, I swear to God, Tim, I have it I say it in my head over and over again, and then as soon as I start talking, because I have my headphones on, my brain just doesn't remember.
No worries. Well, I got a chance to say it's all good.
Well, welcome to the show, sir. Are you having a good day so far?
Oh yeah, I don't work on Fridays, so Friday's one of my favorite days. And
do you sleep in on Fridays?
A little more than normal. I usually have a client that I have to get up pretty early for, but on Fridays, no clients. Get the kids off to the bus, and then pretty much hang out and do whatever I want. I have all these plans about it'll be like the most productive day of mankind's existence. And then around 8:45 a.m., I've realized all that shot to hell, and then I just play Diablo for 4 hours, so it's pretty awesome.
I see nothing wrong with playing Diablo for 4 hours.
Exactly, right. My wife doesn't quite agree with you, but everybody else seems like it's all good.
All right, so the day we're doing this episode, because this will go up in a week or two, is November 4th. And I have done everything in my power to not go to GameStop today and buy the brand new Call of Duty. Not because I want to play not because I want the new Call of Duty. I don't want the new one. I want the remastered Call of Duty 4 so I can play the game that I spent damn near 800 hours playing over 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah. Even my wife would be like, "Oh God, no, not again."
Right, he's on that damn thing.
Yeah. I mean, she's a little. There are days she's like, you work too much. You should take a break and come hang out with me. But I think there's a part of her that's like, well, at least you're not playing video games and completely ignoring me.
Yep. Yeah, we could probably relate. Our wives could probably get together and bitch about us reasonably.
So let's go there. We'll get back to powerlifting in a minute, but let's geek out for a minute. Are you a console or a PC gamer?
I'm really, most of my gaming history is when I was a kid. So, back then it was classic Nintendo and regular PC. And then I kind of got away from it, just being busy, doing other stuff. But then don't tell my kids this, but, Santa brought them the Xbox One. And so that was really, I basically went from Nintendo to Xbox One. So it was a pretty big jump for me.
That's a hell of a jump.
Yep. And so yeah, I'm still, the screen's screaming out X. I'm like, where is the X button? I only know A and B. So I've been taking a little while to get used to that. And then I was pissed because Xbox One, all the games are set up. So I play at my home, you play at your home. It's obviously cool that we can get together, but I got 3 kids and I wanted us all to sit on the couch, and play and also not be against each other because then somebody's always crying. Yeah. So Diablo is actually perfect in that all 4 of us can play. We can play on the same thing. We go, kill orcs and goblins, which makes me happy. And then we're a team. So it's actually the only game I found that's been anything remotely like that. I mean, they have Madden and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But for 4 of us to play at once and be in a team, it's the only one I found that's been pretty good.
I know they've done a couple, but you should try any of the Lego games are amazing. You think as an adult, you're like, I don't know, that seems really they are some of the most fun.
They're pretty good. Yeah. My kids are definitely into the Lego games, and I've liked how they kind of force them to kind of work together, and I've been like, oh, when we get stuck, we go look up this walkthrough and try to figure out what the hell's going on and all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, that's been pretty sweet too.
Are you going to buy the retro Nintendo that's come out and it's got 30 games already loaded up on it, and you just plug in an old you're using an old controller, so you'd have your A and your B back?
I've looked at it. I've definitely looked at it because I was, Tecmo King and Super Tecmo King. That I love those games. But but now when I show my kids videos of that, they're like that is so stupid looking, and I'm like, it was a quality game. It didn't rely on graphics. So Yeah, so who knows? I'll see if I can get him into that. And then on the PC, I grew up on like the Gold Box Dungeons and Dragons games.
Yeah.
So actually recently downloaded those on my computer and tried to play again, but it was cool, but it couldn't quite. It was such a time suckage. I was like, I can't invest 200 hours in this, but still classics.
I got into computer. We didn't get a computer until 1999. So like while everyone else had moved on, I was like, I got to go back and play all the old stuff. And
oh yeah,
I didn't get a chance to play a lot of the stuff I wanted to, or that my friends had played for years. But yeah, those old PC games, man, you could really spend some time but I say that now, and I've already spent 35 hours on Fallout 4.
Nice.
And then I see like Skyrim. They redid. I'm not going to go into my rant on consoles this generation with nothing but remasters, but they remastered Skyrim, and I'm like, oh man, that was almost 100 hours of like gameplay. Like I loved it. I can't do it again. I have a small business. I'm trying like the entrepreneur life, man. That's an RPG.
Yeah, well, I know it gets in the way of just sitting around and doing nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very glad that my wife like takes care of a lot of things while I'm trying to get the business going and allowing me that freedom. But, you know, it's just like, what if we could just sit around and play games all day? Where's that job?
I concur. That would be pretty glorious. Lift, play games, just rock it out.
See, the perfect life.
Yep.
So Tim, you wrote a huge, I mean, you can type into Google powerlifting and you can find some articles, but you basically wrote a book. I mean, it's a huge book all about everything you need to know. And you interviewed some of, the biggest names in powerlifting. One that I believe I saw her in Atlanta a few weeks ago, because she was competing.
Were you down in Atlanta?
Yeah, I was.
I was there as well.
Oh, well, I'm sad I did not get to it. Were you competing?
No, I had a table set up. I was sponsoring it.
Oh,
thanks for stopping by.
Which table? But see, here's the thing, Tim. Like, I'm still learning people in the industry.
Right.
And, like, the powerlifting is a little like, I know a few people that do it, but I don't know a lot of people in that world because it's almost like a separate. Like, there's the powerlifting community, then there's like the general fitness community, and then there's like the nutrition, and then there's like the bodybuilders, and then there's like the bros that are kind of off from the bodybuilders.
Yeah. Like, there's tons of little segments. Exactly.
Yeah. So like I'm still learning things. So I would have, if I'd have known you were there and we had been introduced before that, I totally would have come by. But yeah, I was just there with my good friend Tanner and watching a few people lift. And we actually were at Citadel Nutrition that like earlier one day and got to see Chad Wesley Smith squat like 900 pounds. And I was just like, I don't even lift.
Yep. Sometimes you feel like your man card's getting taken away. That's for sure.
It's not even that. It's just like watching, we're watching people, and both of us would look at each other sometimes and be like, "Dude, you want to go lift? Like we just need to go to the gym right now. We've already been once today. Let's just go again."
Yep. So who did you see? Was it Jennifer Thompson or Susie Hartley-Gary?
Yep. It was Jennifer Thompson. I'm from North Carolina, so I know she's living.
Okay.
I actually know the town she lives in, and just got to watch her lift, and it was like, it's amazing. You know, you don't like. I think that's something is a common misconception about powerlifters, because you see the guys who are huge and squatting like 1,000 pounds, and you don't realize that there are women who weigh like 115, like maybe $135 soaking wet. And they're lifting like 400 pounds on a deadlift. They're bench pressing, more than most people do in a commercial gym. Like, they're strong.
Yeah. She's the queen of the bench. So that was one reason why I was trying to get one or two lifters that were, totally kind of kings of their domain to interview in the book. And yeah, she was definitely one of my go-to people on the bench. And I was really pleased that she was able to do that, do that interview with me. But yeah, she hit 313 at 132. And, obviously, no one knows for sure, but she's certainly a very self-proclaimed drug-free person, and I would certainly take her at her word for that. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome.
So why powerlifting for you? You know, with everything in the fitness world, like, you know, you could have been a bodybuilder, you could have been a little more bro-y, you could have been a CrossFit. Well, I mean, maybe an Olympic lifter since CrossFit wasn't really big until the last 10 years. Like, so why powerlifting?
I just, you know, I started lifting weights. It was like eighth grade gym class. And one of the units was lifting weights. We had one of those like universal benches, you know, where you put the pin in, and they just had all the boys go through and max out. And almost everybody got stuck at 100. And I moved that pin down one, and I was like, I eked out like 115, and I was like, this is pretty fucking cool. And I really wasn't that very athletic as a kid. I was fast, but that was about the only thing I had going for me. I remember, I think in the same year I was on the basketball team, I rebounded, got the ball so excited, shot it in my own goddamn basket because I was just like, I've got the ball. What do I do? I got to shoot it up. And everyone's like, no, you moron. So yeah, so it was not, I had 3 older brothers. And so it was nice to kind of like, you know, start to find something that you were kind of good at. And then ever since then, I just started lifting all the time. And then did my first competition when I was 17 in high school. Bombed out after telling everyone the day before exactly what I was going to lift and how I was going to kick everyone's ass. So that was rather humbling. But I was happy I didn't quit, and then started doing real competitions in 19 and did it all the way through college, and pretty much just recently retired about 2 years ago. And now I just kind of coach and help other people out.
Why the retirement? Why not continue on? Because I noticed that in Atlanta that there were guys there who were 20 years older than me that are lifting more than me, which made me want to go to the gym immediately.
Yep. I mean, honestly, you know, for me, it's like, okay, well, why do I compete? You know, I compete to compete against other people, and then I compete to kind of see what I can do, and also to do more than what I can do. And so, you know, smashing for 20 years, you know, I don't think from a bench point of view, I only bench, for me anyway, what's a good amount when I'm really heavy, which is like 235 for me, and I'm like a little chunky when I'm at that weight, so I don't like being that heavy. I mean, I like how I look in a t-shirt, but I don't like how I feel, and I don't like my oblique and lat are rubbing on top of each other. So
I understand.
And then both of my knees are a little shitty. I've torn my quad on each one, and so that was that kind of sucks. So like super heavy squats aren't in the cards anymore. And then squats is one of the best assistance exercises for deads. So, I mean, honestly, if I could, you know, not that I would take pills, but if I could take like a magic pill and be like, hey, you could suddenly, you know, go squat 600 pounds, I'd be happy to get back up on the platform. But when you kind of catch yourself going down, you know, once you pull 700, then when you pull 600, then when you pull 550, it's not so exciting anymore. So, so it's obviously I'm still lifting, but I'm not training to be a you know, competitive powerlifter at the moment. You know, I reserve the right to change my mind, but I don't think that'll happen anytime super soon. But now I just want to be, you know, fit, hang with my boys, you know, look like I lift, and hang with all my students and still show them what's up if I need to.
There you go. The teacher is still the master.
That's right. At least most of the time.
So what is like it? We see people put up these huge numbers, you know. I don't remember the guy's name. Dude squatted 1,005 pounds.
Ray Williams.
Yeah. I mean, just crazy. Yep. I was mad at myself that I had left earlier that day. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. I leave to come home, even though I knew we were going to have a really awesome dinner that night. I was like, I could have seen that in person.
Right.
The wear and tear that puts on your body. I mean, obviously, this is not something you're doing for 20, 25 years, but how do you take care of yourself even in the middle of that to keep yourself lifting as a powerlifter as long as you can?
I mean, I think it's a combo of, you know, reasonably smart training. And I guess that's one of my fears. I think the pendulum has swung a little bit to high frequency training, which I do think has a lot of merits to it. But on the flip side, you know, I do think it's a little more possible. You can kind of burn yourself out. And when it was the 80s and 90s, you know, there would be a powerlifter. They would win national championships 8 years in a row, 10 years in a row. It was like, oh shit, they show up and like you pretty much know you're taking second. But now I feel like there's a lot more turnover in part because people, the kind of training program, they peak, but then they only last for two or 3 years, and then they kind of drop down.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think a fair amount of it is genetics. I mean, I do think there are some people that, their joints are just built to. I don't think the lifts are inherently bad on the joints. I mean, if I did, I wouldn't be preaching people do them. But it's kind of like, are squats bad for your knees? Well, I don't think squats are bad for your knees. I think it's conceivable that the way you squat is bad for your knees, right? Especially if you go super heavy, all the time, kind of continuous. And then just the nature, obviously powerlifting is a little bit of an extreme sport. You're always trying to push the limits. So anytime, just like throwing the football in the backyard's one thing and playing the NFLs, it's something else.
Yeah.
When you really push yourself to the limits, you're gonna occasionally, have some issues. But I mean, I'm a big believer of, fitness for the long run. And so, I want to be pretty fit and healthy when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm 70, being able to do most of the shit that I want to do. That's the plan.
I gotcha. So one thing I find very interesting is you said that sometimes you're a little heavier when you're in sort of, I guess you're in season, you're training, and then it comes time for a lift. All right. So I know for a bodybuilder, obviously you're trying to get as lean as you can because you need all the muscles showing.
Yep.
What's a diet protocol look like for a power lifter versus, I mean, it's going to be different in the bodybuilding, but for like a normal sort of gym pop person, is it more on the gym pop side? Like you take a lower calories, you're not trying to get super lean, but you're trying to get down and make weight? Because ideally you want to be at the top of your weight class. Or no,
yeah, there's not that much advantage to be, kind of in the middle of a weight class. The only advantage then is if you directly tie someone, tie goes to the lighter person.
Right.
But if you, if you outweigh me by, 8 pounds, and then you only lift 5 more pounds than me, but we're in the same weight class, you win. So usually the goal is, certainly for the better lifters, is to kind of come in, certainly right at the top of their weight class. And then the diet, I mean, one of the nice things obviously is powerlifting. You don't have to be as strict on your diet as you do on bodybuilding. You can eat a fair amount of crap. Powerlifters sometimes have a rap for eating just a whole bunch of shit, which I don't, as somebody who believes in fitness, I don't just preach it's nothing but McDonald's all day, but we can certainly be a little more relaxed. And then the cool thing, or the interesting thing about powerlifting, is you got to decide, losing weight to make that next weight class down isn't always wise. Like me, for example, I usually compete at 198, but if I'm trying to bench the most that I can, I'll bench more at 220, even like in comparison. There's formulas that will say, well, if you bench XYZ at 198, then you would need to bench X, ABC at 220.
Right. But
when I gain those 20 pounds, my bench goes up more than is predicted. So it's actually better for me to gain weight in that scenario. So that's one reason why I have, like, in the back of the book, I have the lifter classifications.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see, like, hey, what's your standards? And this way you can say, well, I'm currently squatting 500 and I'm 200 pounds. If I go up to 220, and then I can squat 560, is that worthwhile or not? Or what if I go down to 180 and now I can squat, 460? Like, which one of those is a better lift? That's one of the benefits of those kind of standards. People can kind of figure out where to be at. And then the other big thing is how much time you have before your weigh-in. Strict competitions like the USAPL, that was the one in Georgia, they only have a 2-hour weigh-in. So you can't, that means you have to weigh in and start lifting within 2 hours. So you can't do a huge amount of like manipulation. But other federations will let you weigh in 18 to 24 hours prior, kind of like, say, like the UFC does, for people familiar with that. And then those people, you can often change, at least 10 pounds and maybe up to 20 pounds. Some people even do more, but I think that's flirting with potential disaster. So not like dying disaster, but like shitty performance on the platform. But obviously that can make a pretty big difference. But usually any manipulation, that would be done in the last week. But powerlifters usually just eat kind of classic, plenty of protein, and then some like more carbs, some like more fat. But usually don't want to be losing too much weight as you get into a meet, because that will definitely mess with your strength.
Yeah, and it messes with your energy system as well. And if you're going to
Yep.
if you're going to be lifting 90% of your 1 rep max and then trying to push it even further, you're going to need that energy system.
You got to have energy. It's a long day. It's definitely a draining day.
Oh, it's a huge. I mean, like you might start lifting at 9 a.m., but you might be done with you might not be done till noon, depending on how and longer than that.
That would actually be a super fast meet. So I've done a lot of meets. We start at 9 a.m. You're not done till 9 p.m.
Really?
And so yeah,
for your class.
Yeah. So like the USAPL, the Raw Nationals, they actually go pretty fast because they have 3 sessions per day. Most regular local meets just have 1 session, but they still take the same length of time because they only have usually just 1 platform.
What's it like the day after that? Like how? I mean, because if you're looking,
you usually feel like a truck just ran you over.
I was gonna say, because I mean, a lot of your day is you get up, you perform your lift, and then you get your second, and then your third, and then you're waiting for for whatever else. I mean, I can't imagine what that next day feels like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of it depends on how you did. So if you it really sucks when you feel like a truck ran over you and you sucked, and then you're just like, oh fuck, there was 3 months of training down the drain. But even when you do well, you usually feel you usually feel pretty bad. And a lot of it's just that it's just very anxious. You're trying to put all the stuff that you've done the last 2 or 3 months on the platform. You only have a limited time, and a lot of lifters, they get too excited in one lift, like for example squats or bench, and then they're just so drained to come deadlift, they just want the competition to be over, and then they can't get fired up again. So there's a big fatigue management, adrenaline management going on. So that's definitely something that you have to balance when you're more experienced.
So one of my questions was for your first meet, like what was one of your biggest mistakes? And it sounds like that would be a big mistake for a lot of newcomers to powerlifting for their first meet is they don't realize how draining it's going to be. So what was that your first big
mistake? No. Well, my first actual lifting competition, which wasn't an official sanction thing. It was just a big high school competition in Northern Virginia. And you only just had one judge. And the judge, just would say yes or, yay or nay. My mistake there was I didn't realize that if a dude puts his hands on the bar and says it's all you while you're benching, it may not actually be all you. Keep in mind I'm 17 at this point. So just understanding the difference between kind of a real lift, and then a partner bro spot, doing an upright row while you're benching. And then my first real competition was actually kind of funny. I'm still not exactly sure how they had it set up, but I was literally the first lifter of the whole day. I think it was because I was a teenager and they kind of organized it by age. And so I walk out and again, I had never seen a powerlifting competition like a real one. I had never been to one. I'm the first lifter. So I walk out for squats. I have my t-shirt on top of my singlet. So it's covering up my singlet. And I have a fucking a Velcro belt, like the old, it was an old chic Velcro belt, which is totally illegal. You're not allowed to have a Velcro belt. And so I go walking out to squat and the meet director stands up. He's like, stop the meet. And shuts everything down. But he was actually pretty cool. And he grabbed me. He's like, what the hell are you doing, kid? And he stuffs my shirt, my singlet. Then he ran to his gym bag and he gave me his super cool powerlifting belt, which I was like, oh, what the hell is this? And then of course my very first lift, I didn't understand that once they give you the command, you can't move your feet. So I get the squat command, I reshuffle my feet, I go down. Obviously, I get red lights. But being the arrogant little 19-year-old prick I was, I still decided to lift more weight. And luckily, I got it on the second and third. But basically, the real big mistake that I see for a lot of just pure newbies is they just don't know what the rules are. Yeah. Either equipment-wise, of course, squat depth is probably your single most common newbie mistake. So people don't understand that what seems like a good squat in a gym is often not a good squat in a competition. Probably the second thing is not understanding the difference between a pause bench and a touch and go bench, especially if you're someone who kind of uses that springboard on your chest like a lot of people in a commercial gym might use. So just thinking they can lift more and not really knowing the rules or the standards, I would say that's your number one mistake. So as you get more advanced, then controlling that adrenaline. So
for those who might be listening right now and wondering if they don't know what the rules are, what are the rules for powerlifting and how is it different than what you might be doing in the gym typically?
So in a squat, obviously we could make this super long and complicated. I'll kind of give you the short version. So in a squat, you're just going to get 2 commands. Basically, they're going to say, hey, the bar is ready. You put the bar on your back, you walk it out, you get yourself set. once they say squat, you may not move your feet at all. So even if you're unhappy with your position, you know, tough noogies, you gotta stick with it. And then the biggest thing is the top of your hip. Basically, the crease at your hip has got to be below the top of your knee. So it's not a parallel squat. It's certainly not a bottom of the leg parallel squat. It's below parallel squat. President of 100% Raw Federation gave me kind of the best analogy, which he said at the bottom of the squat, if you put a marble on your knee, or like where the muscles of your thigh are at the knee, would that marble roll towards your hips or would it roll towards your foot? And so if it rolled towards your hips, it means it's below parallel, right? If the marble would roll towards your foot, it means your leg's above parallel and it's not deep enough. So I think most people can kind of make something out of that visualization.
Okay.
And then for the bench, the biggest thing is you have to bring it down. Your feet have to be flat and on the floor. Your butt has got to stay on the bench. And then when you bring it down, you're going to hold it on your chest until the judge says press. And it's a little bit like baseball. Every judge has kind of their own, you know, like each baseball, you get your own strike zone, and every judge has their own kind of press command. So the most common thing is count to yourself 1,001 and then press. But sometimes you can get a judge who will give you a really long press command, which is obviously a little harder. Occasionally you get a judge who's a little more lifter friendly. But it should be a definite visible pause, and it's got to stay there. And so if you're not used to it, that can easily take 10% off your bench. Once you've been training, it shouldn't really be much of a difference, you know, maybe 2%, something like that. Some lifters actually find they actually kind of prefer the press once they've been training it for a while. But especially if you're somebody who, you know, does a pretty strong touch and go where you really smack your chest, then you know, then you're going to be quite disappointed when someone says sit down there and hold it, and you're like, oh shit, I thought I could do 3 plates. I'm struggling to do 285 all of a sudden. So, and again, the ass has got to stay on the bench. A lot of people shove their butt up. And deads is usually, if you can make it through those first two, you know, a gym deadlift tends to mimic a real deadlift most of the time. The only issue, I guess, would be maybe two is you can't use straps. That's a big one. So you have to grip the weight. And then you're not allowed to hitch, which means you can't like kind of drag it up your thighs and like use your thighs as a ramp to get it up there. So it has to kind of go to clean lockout. But squats and bench are the most butchered.
The bench thing I noticed when I was there was like, oh yeah, you have to pause it. Like that changes everything.
Most definitely.
And the squat, this is not something like I don't write about this. I don't like, even with my clients, I'm like, as long as you get the parallel, like I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. Because for most people, like when you see people in the gym, they're sort of doing like a 3/4. They're not really getting the parallel anyways.
Right.
I personally, for myself, when I started, I was like, you know what? I want to go ask the grass. I want to see how deep I can go. My wife, who's not really much of a lifter, she's only really gotten into it in the last like 8 to 10 weeks. Within like 4 weeks, she like squatted one day and was like, I've never gotten this low in my life, and I've been a dancer for like 30 years.
Right.
And she was like, this is crazy. I'm like, it's the power of squats.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. But like, whatever you practice the most, like if you really want to get good, just take the bar for a couple of weeks and every day just practice on getting deep in that squat. And it's a great way to sort of see how deep you can get. Now not everyone structurally is built that way. Right. But I think it's good to see sort of wider, more narrow. That was one thing I noticed in some of the lifters in Atlanta. They had really narrow squat stances. Like almost they were back squatting like they would if they were front squatting. And I was like, whoa, whoa. All right. Somebody's got the quad gains.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, some people take that narrow stance and they'll get more out of almost, you know, the benefit of a full ass to grass is then you can get a little bit of that stretch reflex at the bottom. So almost like an Olympic lifter, they'll kind of like hit the bottom and spring back up, especially the smaller lifters. And that's one of the huge differences you'll find with kind of like a raw competition, especially something like USAPL, which does make you, you know, they're pretty strict on depth. Versus some other powerlifting federations or like super geared federations, they usually just kind of require that middle of the leg parallel. Yeah. And then if you really want to maximize it, then you'll go super wide stance to shorten that range of motion. And since you don't have to go as low, you can hit the depth. It's super hard to hit the right depth with a super wide stance unless you're crazy flexible. So Yeah, so you could mix it up. But I don't force like everyone in the gym or like everyone in my class they have to do a full powerlifting squat. The simple recommendations usually just go down as low as you can without compensating your form. So if you're flexible enough to get down there, great. But if you can only go parallel squat and something hurts, then say la vie. You can still get a lot out of it.
True. So Tim, what's the most common objection you hear from people about powerlifting? Like as you got into it, as you started to promote it and write about it and coach it, you talk with friends, you talk with other people who come into your gym or whatever. Like when you talk about it, what's the most common objection you hear?
I think for lay people, it's, I'm going to get hurt, or I don't want to ruin my joints or ruin my body, something like that. And I don't think that there's a huge amount of evidence on that. Again, it is a little bit of an extreme sport, and you are pushing your body pretty hard. But certainly, at least from a research point of view, there's not really much evidence that excessive, wear and tear literally causes like degenerative joint disease. At least in all like the dog studies and stuff, where they've had dogs just like run, forever on treadmills with weights and stuff, their joints are usually fine. So again, each individual is a little different. And then if we look specifically at females, it's usually, I don't want to get big and bulky. And so actually just today, I just finished up my Powerlifting for Women blog article that I'll be releasing shortly. And, one of the best things about that, I think, is there is, and to give CrossFit a little nod of credit, there's a lot of really fit females that are smashing weights there, and they look good and they don't look masculine. And in powerlifting, sometimes you might have a super heavyweight or something like that who's, looks a little more masculine, but, that's why, I interviewed Susie Hartwig-Gary. She's 104 pounds, squatting 300 pounds, deadlifting 300 pounds, well, plus those numbers. She's very feminine, looks good. So does Jennifer Thompson. And there's tons of others. Olympic weightlifting too. You get some light females that can throw around some insane weight. So I think that stereotype's finally starting to fall, that women will get, big and bulky, but it's definitely still out there. And, and it's probably something I hear. And I think that the last thing is just people are a little scared of just going heavy, for whatever reason. But I think all of those you can kind of break down with some education. And it's certainly not a sport I want to force on people. It's only something you should do if you're passionate about. Right.
So I've read a lot of things in the last year or so. I know Greg Nuckols did a great article on.
I don't really believe in reading, but okay.
Well, Greg has really long articles. It takes a lot to read.
Yes.
But, he wrote a piece about why you should train like a bodybuilder. So my question to you as a powerlifter is, why or how should someone who's used to just lifting typically in the gym, doing more bro split, maybe they only lift a couple days a week and run and, do the treadmill or whatever, why should they take some powerlifting tips and put that into their own training?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually talk about this exactly with my students all the time, to kind of relate it to them. So I say, okay, we're personal trainers. So as personal trainers, what do we need to be experts on? And so the scope of practice for a personal trainer is to enhance the components of fitness for the general healthy population. So we take the components of fitness, and what are your classic components of fitness? Well, you got body composition, you got muscle strength, muscle endurance, cardio, flexibility. So as trainers, we should be experts in all of those things. So my attitude is, well, the way you become an expert is you look at the people that are the best in those things, and then you start to learn from that. It doesn't mean that, the person who bench presses the most automatically knows the most, but I guarantee you to bench press 500, 600, 700 pounds, you have learned a fair amount along the way, and we can learn something from that person. So just like if I want to learn about body composition, I think looking at how bodybuilders eat and how they structure their diet, again, it doesn't mean everyone must eat that way, but we can deduce nuggets of truth and knowledge from that. And so just like I would look at a really good runner, and if I wanted to improve my VO2 max or my cardio, so same thing. If you want to get stronger, which is what most people are doing in the gym, you're lifting weights, you want to then turn to the people that are the best at lifting weights, which is the powerlifters and the Olympic weightlifters, depending on the genre that you're focused on. And then you can, so how do you bench? If I want to get stronger, how do I structure this? And just getting stronger is so useful for regular people. It makes their everyday life so easy. Really, powerlifters are just people that have taken to get stronger to the nth degree. But just like, if somebody wanted to put a half inch on their arms, they could still learn from a bodybuilder about gaining muscle size. Well, if you want to get a little bit stronger in your squat, you want to go from squatting 60 pounds to 120 pounds, guess what? You can learn something from a powerlifter by doing that. So yeah, I believe study the experts, see what got them there, and see what you can learn from that, and then apply that to your own training.
Awesome. I mean, that's basically, well, I guess except for like marathon runners, because I just really hate long distance.
I just threw
running.
them in to be nice. Yeah, obviously nobody actually wants to
no,
run.
but like looking at everything, there's a ton of stuff to learn from everyone, and I think,
yep.
Even as I said before, even if you have no desire to ever do a sort of powerlifting thing, like, the rule is for a good squat, get the parallel. But if you really want to push yourself, try that little bit further down, so the marble runs to the hip and not, to the foot. So like finding those little things, doing those little things that are out of the ordinary that you're used to can actually completely change your game. And I know I've done that with a lot of my coaches, done things where I'm like, I don't really understand why I'm doing this. And then just magically through doing it, I'm like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. All right. So a couple of fun questions and then we'll go back to talking training. Tim, if you could go anywhere in a time machine, where would you go?
Anywhere in a time machine, where would I go? That's a pretty good question. Let's see. Well, since I'm in a bit of a D&D kind of phase, I guess I would like to go. What I think would be interesting would be go back to kind of, and I don't have this exact time frame, but go back to basically Middle Age-esque time.
Yeah. And
see. I'd like to see like how like the super badass like sword fighters actually like how did they train. Right. And I would be curious to see, like, it would be interesting to see, like, take a sword master now. My prediction is you take the person on the planet who's the best with swords now and put them back 1,000 years ago, and they just get their ass completely kicked because those people were actually, like, sword fighting for their lives, their familyhood, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it would just be kind of interesting to see, like, are they doing things 8 hours a day? Are they just, is it just because they started super young? Like, it'd be interesting to kind of see just what kind of stuff they believed, what their fitness was like, if you could kind of measure them on some different fitness standards. So I guess the shorter answer is I'd like to know a little bit more about kind of middle-aged life, what it was like, and just kind of, not that I necessarily want to replace that with today's life, because I like my TV, and I like not fearing that someone's just going to, stab me for no reason, or steal my kids or something. But it's, I think it would be cool to learn more about that. But I think you could answer that like 50 different ways.
Oh,
so
of course,
that just popped in my head.
And the thing about medieval sword fighting is, according to my cousin-in-law, who actually bought my wife and I a broadsword for a wedding gift. Replica.
That's what I bought all my ushers was medieval weapons that matched their personalities.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
We don't really know how they fought because all that information just disappeared.
Yeah. There's like a few texts, but there's not much.
But no one really knows what broadsword fighting, or even like no one knows. No one really knows. So we're just going off of like small scrolls and things we have. We don't really know. What's the last new thing you've tried?
The last new thing I've tried. Let's see. I am definitely a routine-based person, which my wife will tell you with a bit of anger in her voice, as she's much more the adventurous type. Let's see. The last new thing. What the hell did I try that was new? Well, I don't know if this counts. I put some car magnets on my car to try to drum up business for my personal training school. So now I've got, like, I'm driving around with a big, like, hey, you want to be a trainer? Like, ask me, like, how to become a trainer. So that's a little new. I feel like I did something. I'd never been to Atlanta, so when I drove down to Atlanta to go to that competition. That wasn't, I don't know if I was trying something new, but and then I went to the aquarium there. That was pretty badass. All those whale sharks. That was freaking super studly. I don't know.
All right. Hey, there you go.
I got a few things in there.
You got a few things in there. Tim, what store would you max your credit card out at? Oh,
max my credit card out at. Well, Whole Foods has maxed my credit card out at many times. The whole wallet scenario there. And then but I could easily go to some sort of like medieval store, you know, and like walk out of there with like $10,000 worth of like armor and swords and shit that would probably just sit in my corner, and then people would look at me and be like, "What the hell?" I need to get some stuff. I need to get like a new like pull-up bar and stuff like that for my house, so I could definitely get some gym stuff. Yeah, but probably just like useless, like fun toys, you know, that like I always wanted to have when I was a kid. And probably could have now, but really don't have much reason for, and don't want to spoil the hell out of my own kids. Anything like that would be where I would go.
Do you have a guilty pleasure song on your workout mix that you would shamefully admit to others you listen to?
Well, there's two things in there. The shame that I have is I'm actually not much of a music guy at all. Okay. I probably owned maybe 2 CDs in my life. I've only made 1 workout mix in my life. And most of the time I just drive around with the radio off in my car. And actually my wife just installed Pandora on my phone because I had to teach a 2-hour group exercise class 2 weeks ago. That was pretty awesome. So I needed some fun stuff. But the other shame thing is Shania Twain's "Man, I Feel Like a Woman." That kind of just gets me like popping, and I wouldn't really mind lifting to that song. So,
all right,
it's not my come out and max out song, to be clear, but I do feel a little pop in my step when I hear that song.
All right. Greg Nuckols swears by Katy Perry, and I tried it one day.
There you go.
I will never, ever, ever deny the power of firework while you're in the bottom of a squat. At all. All right. If you could write a note to your younger self, what would you say in only 2 words?
Only 2 words?
Yep.
Recheck condom. Are you getting, is the other voices in your head talking to you?
No, I just heard a sound. I wanted to.
Okay.
I'll be back in a second.
Sure.
The wind's blowing outside, so we're in like.
Is he whispering your name?
No, I just it just sounded like something had like slammed, so it's probably just something out on the porch.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways, all right. So all right, recheck condom. Okay.
No, let's see. Actually, what I really tell myself is the biggest thing I'm like pissed about is you got to name your programs, like your fitness programs. Okay. You have to name them, because when people say like, "Oh, I'm following this program," or "I want to do this program," it's the whole thing with like CrossFit, for example. They have all their named workouts, and then the people can start to compare. Oh, like, you know, I did Fran. Everybody knows what Fran is. You can kind of figure it out. But really, when you write normal workout programs, you don't actually name them. And so, you know, and then it's like, well, what is this plan? And it's like, well, you can explain it, but it doesn't have like Wendler's like 531. It's a catchy name. It's easy to start talking about. So if I could go back in time, I would start naming my programs like much more like succinct, kind of clever names. You know, like I'm following the X-Wing, you know, or I'm on the Jedi Apprentice or whatever.
You know what? I would buy that program in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I hope to start doing anyway. But I should have done that 20 years ago. I'd have this whole battery of kick-ass plans that people can easily talk about. Because even now, the main program I named on T-Nation called the Shut Up Plan, they actually came up with that name, and that's like my most popular program by far. So people are like, "Oh, I'm on the Shut Up Plan." It's like, okay, well now you know what the hell you're talking about.
Gotcha. So reading through the book, there's a ton of things that I was learning in it, and I gotta ask this because it is the probably next to rear delts, unless you're a client of mine, because I love glute and rear delt training because I just think it's very important.
Sure.
Is calves. I don't. Listen, I admit, unless a coach gives me calves, I'm not training them. They don't grow. They don't do anything. They bore me. I just want to yell at everyone who rides bicycles and has better looking calves than me. And I'm like, You get that from bike. I should start biking. I just want calves.
Right.
Why are calves hampering your deadlift? And maybe that's one reason why I haven't finally succeeded at my goal is maybe it is my calves. So why are calves important for your deadlift?
Did you get the impression that I thought that they were important in your deadlift?
Well, so from reading it, you're just talking about like how tight they can be. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how tight they are because in a lot of things we do, we sort of don't really foam roll them. We sort of foam roll everything else. And it's not something we really massage. And, you know, our feet are tight. So like we try to massage our feet, but it could be that whole area sort of in one. But I just wanted to, like reading through it, it just made me think, well, maybe my calves are hampering my deadlift.
So I would say two possible things there. I would seriously doubt the strength of your calves is hampering your deadlift. But what can happen is when those calves are tight, you can't push your shin forward the way you need to. It's more likely to show up in a squat, but it's possible it could be in a deadlift. And so if you can't get that dorsiflexion because they're super tight, then essentially you have got to compensate most likely by leaning forward and essentially like Romanian deadlifting your regular deadlift, which is then going to take your quads out of it, and then that's going to leave some weight on the platform. But from a strength point of view, I don't think the calves are really very important in any of the power lifts. Right.
No, I just meant like that sort of hampering because they're tight. And again, it's just something a lot of us sort of overlook.
I was the same way. I mean, I had a strength coach call me decaffeinated in front of a group of people. It fucking pissed me off. And I really liked it too. So, and I actually, that's one comment, shows you just how fragile my eggshell-like ego is. I spent 3 years just destroying my calves, and they ended up, I went from 14 inches to 17 inches, so they put a lot of size on, and they got pretty strong, but I never saw any dick improvement on my powerlifting total during that time. I just had noticeably bigger calves. They went from shitty to medium. I never got them from medium to great. So, I think I actually made them a little tighter because of all the super intense training.
Yeah.
And so that would be another thing I would tell myself is if you're going to do that calf program, like stretch more, so they don't get super tight.
Okay. Just something I was reading through, and I was like, I wonder how many people are actually doing enough ankle stretches, and you know that's one area that's sort of holding them back because they are, you know, their calves are tight, their feet are tight, they don't have that dorsiflexion in their ankle because we don't think about how important that joint is for so many things. Which is why, like, I know it almost blows a lot of the clients' minds when you're like, hold on a second, I'm going to put 2 plates up under your ankles, up under your heels, and all of a sudden they can get like 2.5, 3 inches lower in a squat. And they're like, oh my God, what happened?
Like, this is magic. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's something that we don't train. So just sort of reading through, that was sort of what I was picking out.
Yeah. I've got that a lot from, you know, the European coaches. One of the things they look for in kids that are Olympic weightlifters is just their dorsiflexion ability. Yeah. And that's like one of their first, you know, criteria is you got to be super flexible if you want to get into Olympic weightlifting. Yeah. You know, for them, it's a whole state program. So I was like, oh, well, there's got to be something to that if that's like their number one litmus test. So even for us. So yeah, it's definitely important.
So what are some issues that, and this could be for anyone who even isn't a powerlifter, but they still do the big 3, they bench, they squat, they deadlift. What are some common, easily remedied? Well, he just disagrees with this line of questioning. All right.
As I said, my kids are going to be coming home right around this
No, that's time. Fine. I can cut it. I can cut it here.
Well, we can keep talking. I'm just going to tell them to just be quiet.
That's
so. Fine. Just give me 1 second.
No, take your time.
Hey guys, wait. I'm on the phone with somebody. Okay? So you guys keep on the play. Keep it quiet. All right, I'll be out in 20 minutes or something. All right, sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. All right, so for people who squat, bench, and deadlift, let's just assume everyone is in the gym doing that. What are some easily remedied issues that you see people, or mistakes that you see that people make in those 3 but what are some easily remedied suggestions you can give them to improve their squat, bench, or deadlift?
So, well, first, a couple things. One, even though the book is entitled All About Powerlifting, it's really written for anybody that lifts weights. And actually, when I first started to write it, it was really just more of like a general, like fitness book, which kind of morphed into powerlifting. So really, anybody that lifts weights, I do think would get a lot out of it. So let's run down the squat. The biggest thing I would say is not keeping your weight in your heels. And the easiest trick for that is lift your big toe up when you're squatting. Don't necessarily do it with like your maximal weight, but when you're warming up, if you take your big toe and you lift it up like you're trying to scratch your shoe, like the top of your shoe, that puts your weight automatically in your heels. And then when you squat down, you can squat down a lot easier. So that's a big cue I usually give people. For bench, probably the biggest thing is they're not touching the right part of their chest. They're flaring their elbows out and the bar is coming closer to their clavicle. Mm-hmm. And so if they do that too long, that's going to be rough on their shoulders. They should also touch their chest unless they have some sort of like already pre-existing condition. So we're not looking to like stop halfway down. Or, you might have heard, oh, your elbow doesn't go beyond your body, whatever bullshit that is. So no, just, come all the way down, touch your chest, but tuck the elbows in. And then deads, just learning proper form. I mean, people can just walk up and often, males can just pick up 2 plates or 275 and they're like excited, I can go kind of heavy, but their form just sucks. Now their back is super rounded. Yeah. And so, it's like, hey, spend a couple weeks at 135, get that form right. And then actually you'll be able to do 4 plates pretty soon versus, doing 275 for a couple months and then your back's bothering you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is something where, I sort of fucked up my low back, probably due really to the fact that my glutes were basically dead from sitting at a desk all day, in my corporate job. And I hurt my back and I backed off and focused on just getting form. I mean, did it suck that I wasn't lifting super heavyweight? Sure. But I was bound and determined not to hurt myself.
Right.
So yeah, totally. I agree with that. Get the form, always nail the form on those big lifts before you start trying to, maximize, the weight. So Tim, one of my final questions before we wrap up, what about getting ready for a powerlifting meet has taught you what lessons have you taken from getting ready for a meet that you can apply to life or your business?
That's a good question. Getting ready for a meet to apply to life or business, I would say, I guess a couple things pop into mind. One is that you can't rush important stuff. So, one of the nice things about signing up for a competition is, okay, I've got 3 months and, I've got a certain amount of time to get ready. I've got a certain amount of time to get ready for something. And, if you slack off for those 2 months or 10 weeks, you can't make up for that now. You can't just be like, oh, I'll just cram all this stuff in. So same thing with business. There's often paperwork you got to follow, regulations you got to do, whatever. You can't just like advertise, like a week before like a gym opens, and then be like, oh, where are all my people? I thought I'd be good to go. So you got to plan some shit out. And then the other thing I would say is just kind of have faith in the process and stick with the game plan. So a lot of powerlifters will, they'll have a pretty good training cycle, but either one of two things happens. They start to question themselves when it comes time for the competition. So like the warm up, they'll do a warm up like it didn't feel quite as easy. 135 didn't feel so easy as it does in the gym. Like, oh, I'm screwed. I better go change all my weights and lower them. I'm having a shitty day. And it's like, look, you're hypersensitive at that time. You really just have to kind of ignore that biofeedback and, trust yourself. If you hit these numbers in training, strength is surprisingly static. So it's not going to change that much. So just, follow the plan. And then on the flip side, some people are like, oh, like it's a competition. I'll have my adrenaline. I'm just going to add 10% to everything because, I'm just going to be fired up. And it's like, good luck with that. And same thing, you have to, trust the process. And the worst case scenario is if the process doesn't work, like at least you learned the whole thing. But the problem is if you change your plan last minute, then you don't know, like, was it something you screwed up at the last week? Was your whole 3-month cycle screwed up? Are you just mentally a pussy? Like, what's going on? So create a plan. I often use the analogy like workouts are like recipes. So like create the plan, cook it, i.e. do the actual workout, and just let the end results speak for themselves. And if it sucks, just like if a recipe sucks, well, you say, okay, well, that sucked. I won't do that again, but at least you learn from that. So with a workout plan, follow it to the end, give it its due if you thought it was a good plan in the first place. And then from there, you can learn and tweak and say, hey, I need to modify this. I got to change this and rock and roll from there.
I like it. That's really, really, really great advice. I think that a lot of people, I harp on the process all the time, and it's just, it's something you don't really understand until you follow something all the way through. And then you sort of really see the beginning and the end, and you realize, oh, everything I learned, what made me stronger was in the actual work, not the end result.
Yep.
Yep. And I have to remind myself of that every day with business and learning new things that I'm learning and trying to get better with this or getting better with that it's the process that matters. So it's hard to teach because it's just something you kind of have to learn on your own.
Totally.
And I think just that's an important thing to take away. So, Tim, we're wrapping up. We're here close to an hour. I've enjoyed chatting and getting to know you a little bit more on the show. If people want to know more about you, where can they find you online, or where can they go and pick up your amazing, amazing book on powerlifting?
I definitely appreciate the kind words. Best thing to do is I've set up a website to support the book. So the name of the book is All About Powerlifting, and the website is allaboutpowerlifting.com. I try to post blog articles on there pretty frequently. That's also the best place to buy the book. We just got a brand new product came out, which is we just put together 3 DVDs, one on the squat, one on the bench press, one on the deadlift, and each one's about 2 hours long. And so it's I think people get a lot out of that. You can either get DVDs regular, you can live stream them. I've got a pretty good deal going where you can get the book and the DVDs for $50, which I think is a pretty good deal for people. So just go to that site, allaboutpowerlifting.com, and check it out. Again, look me up on Facebook. You can certainly message me or whatever. I'm usually pretty happy to respond and chat. And yeah, this was definitely fun. I appreciate you guys having me on the show. And maybe we can do it again sometime and talk even more about Dungeons and Dragons.
I have to admit this. I admitted it a little while ago on a Full Disclosure Friday on Facebook. I've actually never gotten to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
I wanted to as a kid, but I kind of grew up in a very, very religious area, and it was
right.
The devil.
It's the devil's game.
It's the devil's game.
To play that.
So I didn't know anyone who actually played, and I've always wanted to because, like, I went to school for theater. I have a degree in that. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like the perfect game for me and my creative spirit to play. But someday, yes. it will happen. So, but Tim, I've enjoyed chatting and getting to know you. So, guys, head over to allaboutpowerlifting.com. You can pick up the book there. If you want links to anything we talked about as well, you can find it on the show notes, sidequestfitness.com /podcast, and you can find that over there and get all the show notes as well. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, my friend. Thanks for having me.